Chad Taylor and the Center Club for hosting. Thank you. Yes, please. And Chad has offered all of us, whether you're members of the Center Club or not, if you wanted to have something to eat or drink afterwards, just go to the bar and they'll take care of you there. So thank you so much, Chad. In 1982, several community leaders got together because they saw a missing link, which was being competitive, and some things stay the same, right? There was the international sector was something that these community leaders wanted to make sure that San Antonio was up to par with other communities. And so several community leaders got together and they noticed that other cities around the country had World Affairs Councils. And the Mr. Frost and the Zachary's and the Judge Wolfs and the Lila Cockerells, they got together and they formed what has now become the World Affairs Council of San Antonio. That same vision that they had, you will see here today of the wonderful individuals here, community leaders who are providing their vision in this wonderful book that they're going to talk about today. On behalf of my staff, Clarissa, Miranda, and our interns, Megan and Marilyn, I want to welcome all of you to our, pretty much our last program of the year. I also want to recognize, if my board could stand up, I wouldn't be able to do this without them. Patricia Diaz-Dennis, who hired me, Hugo Lizaraga, our board chair, Harry Lukenon, Paul Martin, Clarence White, who is representing Trinity on behalf of Dr. Beasley, and of course, Inigo Arzak. This wouldn't have happened, yes. This wouldn't have happened without someone who has rejoined the World Affairs Council, Inigo Arzak, who came up with this idea to have this event, and also got Wells Fargo to sponsor us. So Inigo and Wells Fargo, thank you so much for sponsoring this event. There are a few people I want to recognize, and then I want to turn it over so we get into the discussion and what you all are here for. I want to recognize Hung Tao Jin and his wife Helen, who are volunteering their time to take pictures and video of all of our events. So thank you, Hung Tao. I'm going to run down a list of people who have been significant to the World Affairs Council, and also some elected officials. And if you want to raise your hand or stand up or don't say anything, we'll still recognize you. Former City Councilwoman Mariela Cisneros. Our 2009 International Citizen of the Year, Frank Holmes, is here. International Citizen of the Year, Graham Weston. And actually, Henry Cisneros was also the International Citizen of the Year in 2014 when we had Bill Clinton as our keynote speaker. So thank you all for, yes. And I will tease out a little bit. In 2026, we're going to honor someone. I can't give out their name exactly, but they're in the healthcare field, in UT Health maybe, and that will be announced very soon coming up, so keep a lookout for that event. U.S. District Judge Xavier Rodriguez is here. Thank you, Judge. And we also have the Honorary Consul de France, Damien Patel. Damien, thank you. Is it far? Eduardo Parra, former board chair. Thank you, Eduardo Parra, for being here. And last but not least, I want to recognize the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas, Port San Antonio and the Harvard Business Club for being one of our, Port San Antonio is one of our long-term partners, but the Federal Reserve and Harvard Club are one of our newest partners, so we really appreciate your support. You are all in for a treat with the discussion of this book. And the person who's going to say a few words is someone who I admire a great deal, has become a great friend, who used to be the board chair of the World Affairs Council before my time, and just when he thought he was out, we pulled him back in, as I like to say. So thank you all for being here. We look forward. Thank you all for writing this amazing book, and especially after the elections, can't wait to hear what you all are going to say. And I want to turn it over to Ilya Arzak.
Thank you, Norman. Well, it's an honor to be here tonight with all of you, and it is such a relevant and timely topic that we're going to get to listen to. And the World Affairs Council, a mission of bringing the world to San Antonio and San Antonio to the world. What is happening really just here in our city and our region is extremely noteworthy, and then having the ability to now get to listen to it, as they say, straight from the horse's mouth is going to be super interesting. But the three authors are three wonderful San Antonians that I've gotten to work with them or interact with them over the last few now decades. I'm one day myself, and I'll tell you three things from each of them. So I met Bob Rivard when I was on the board of the UTSA Alumni Association, and he hosted us at his home for a book signing of the book Trail of Feathers that he had just written. And I just love how that experience was so special to read some passages from the book, ask questions from the author, at the author's home, and knowing that he went to UTSA just like I did, it made a big impact on me, and I always remember and I treasure that. And I'm so excited that you're still writing books, and we're going to get to hear with even more people. So thank you, Bob, for taking the time to Then I got to work in international affairs at the city of San Antonio back in the day. I got this like 50 years ago. And I got to go on a trade mission to Spain, and that was a very important trade mission that David Hendricks, who was the business reporter for the Express News, accompanied us to document it and do articles every day. So we're traveling and doing all this work, and he's writing articles and sending pictures so that people back in San Antonio can hear about it. And if there's someone that has had the pulse of the business community of San Antonio over the last few decades, it's David Hendricks, and I'm so thankful to you also. And then a man that needs no introduction, Don Henry Cisneros, who to me, there's so many great things to say about Don Henry, but to me, my greatest experience is that when I got to go as a German Marshall Fellow and represent San Antonio about 12 years ago, I came back and I got selected to be a city coordinator. And the one thing that they ask you is, please have people from your city that can meet with these people from Europe that are parliamentarians, CEOs, and all that, learn about your community and be able to take back those stories and build those transatlantic relationships. And when I reached out to Don Henry and told him about it, first he congratulated me on winning. He was very surprised. That was my wife, and many people that knew me. But he offered to help. And every time that these fellows have come, I think we've posted 7 years now as well as being in the World Affairs Council. Henry has made time to meet with them, tell them about San Antonio, answer the questions, and you'll see it obviously right now, the passion you have for our community, the knowledge that you have for it. We are very lucky as a city to have someone like all three of you and you and Henry still doing the work, put the effort in making San Antonio what it is. Very appreciative. So without further ado, we're going to ask our 3 panelists and authors to step into the hot seats, and we will kick our program off. So a big round of applause for our 3 authors. And I will turn over this microphone to Bob, the experts.
Good evening, everyone. Great to be big thanks for coming out here. I know you could be at home with a beer and Netflix, so we really appreciate you being out here. Thank you, Arvin, so much for having us, and Inigo, thank you, and thank you to Wells Fargo, really appreciate it. Where is Judge Rodriguez sitting? Behind you. Here we are. You know, unless you're under indictment, and are any of you, you may not have been to the new federal courthouse. I'm sure when Judge Rodriguez was appointed a federal judge, nobody told him, you're also going to build a courthouse. That was an 18-year process in this city, getting our new federal courthouse moved out of Hemisphere, get it funded, get it designed, and get it built. And Judge Rodriguez had to do that project. So Judge, thank you for building our beautiful courthouse. We're just full of stuff like that nobody else knows, and I'm not sure you need to know, but I saw Judge Rodriguez and wanted to point that out because I care intensely about downtown, as so many of you do, and so we will be more than happy to talk about Tuesday's election and the outcome and where we're going from here. We were just in a large group yesterday morning presenting the book, and it seemed like that's about all people wanted to talk to you about, Henry, was the election and where we're going from here. So we're really excited about everything that's going to happen in Hemisphere with the Spurs and beyond, and everything Graham Weston's doing on this side of downtown, and the missions and the new ballpark that are coming. All right, Megaregion. I'm really honored to be the sort of third wheel on this project. David and Henry wrote a seminal book, The Texas Triangle. How many people here have heard The Texas Triangle? And pointed out something that I think very few of us knew, which was if you looked at the Dallas-Fort Worth, Houston, and San Antonio, Austin economy, you were talking about an economy that ranked somewhere in the top 20 globally, I believe, larger than many of the nations we knew. And that was an eye-opener because we've become almost like a city-state in Texas, like a Singapore or somewhere, or Hong Kong. And I think the natural extension of that was as the Austin-San Antonio corridor became the fastest growing corridor in the United States, we all began reading those news stories about where we were, number one of this, number two of that. If it wasn't us, it was Austin or it was Nashville. And what we didn't realize until we got into it, what I didn't realize until I got into it much more deeply with these guys, 9 of the 15 fastest mid-sized cities in America are in this corridor. 9 of the 15. You look at Braunfels and San Marcos, and I'm throwing Bernie and Seguin into this, but also Round Rock and Georgetown. There's Buda and other places that are along the corridor. They're all growing by leaps and bounds. It's not just Austin and San Antonio. What was once cows and pasture on that 35 when we drove, for those of us that have been around a while, is now it's just bumper to bumper grid with economic activity, with opportunity and with challenge, and that's the nature of the book. I came in toward the end and was able to join in on the reporting and writing, but I'll really let Henry talk about it because it was his concept at the beginning and his lead writer. David and I worked together for many years. David was at one point on the record as the longest serving Express News editorial employee. I think for 42 years, he was a business columnist for there. I didn't make it that long, David, I'll be candid with you, but there's plenty to do after life at the Express News. Well, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Henry, and we'll talk for about a half an hour, and we really want to hear your questions, both about whatever, the election, as well as anything to do with Austin, San Antonio. I hope you'll read the book. I think you'll particularly find the 2 opening chapters on the city of San Antonio and the city of Austin to be really a tale of 2 cities. It's very interesting, and it's all data-driven. So it's pretty much a nonpartisan or apartisan book, but it is a call to action on state leaders, regional leaders, and local leaders we need to do something now to not just sit back and look at the growth, but to plan for it intelligently and invest in infrastructure in ways that will maximize the opportunities and minimize the challenges. Henry, all yours.
Thank you, Bob, and thank you for starting the show off tonight and your introductions. But thank you for your years of work in the journalistic field and for agreeing to work with us on this project. David and I had done some work before on the Texas Triangle. And as we embarked on this, we knew we needed someone to really drive us hard on the just the formation, the framework of the book and so forth. And Bob agreed to do that. As Bob said, David had a long experience in business writing, and we again have been working together for the last 5 years or so. He's in my office working on all things related to research and production of writing and so forth. So my first thanks is to these two gentlemen for helping to put this book together. I also want to thank the World Affairs Council. Thank you for tonight and hosting this group, but thank you principally for the work you've done for San Antonio. In the years that the World Affairs Council has been in being, and that was 1982, so it's over 40 years, the World Affairs Council has helped San Antonio have a sense of its role in the world. Thank you to the leaders of the World Affairs Council, the board members of the World Affairs Council. Inigo, thank you for your invitation here this evening. I think the story of this book, which I'll sort of give you a sense of in a few moments, really is one about one aspect of it in any event is the significance of this region, not just San Antonio, but this region internationally. We know of our long-standing relationship with Mexico, and it's very strong and very important. More important now than ever before. I don't know how many of you sort of looked at the evolution of the automotive cluster, which David Marquez first identified when he was the Economic Development Director for the county. But it's a cluster that runs from the GM facilities in the Metroplex to Tesla in Austin to Toyota here and JCB here and what was International Harvester, Navistar here, and then all the parts manufacturers that run from Coahuila, Monterrey, Guanajuato, León, in Mexico, where in Mexico alone there's 400,000 people working in the automotive sector. It's an amazing cluster when you see it on the ground. And that's part of us. That's part of our economy. That's part of the region that we're part of. So there's the Mexico connection and the Latin American connection. Obviously, we're connected to Japan as we never were before. That Toyota plant is the largest automotive plant by footprint, physical geography in the world. And they produce 240,000 Tundras and Sequoia trucks every year. It's amazing. You know, if it has 21 tier 1 suppliers, Toyota did something they've never done before at any plant in the world, which is put their tier 1 suppliers on the site. And I tell people that any one of those companies that now have gross revenues of $1 billion each, not all of them, but the strongest ones do, if one of those firms had come to town, it would earn a noteworthy notice in the Express News business page, or even the front page. And we have 21 of those that came with Toyota into a single campus. So Japan obviously has an important place in our thinking, as do other parts of Asia. We now have sister cities in Taiwan, in Korea, in India, in China, and those are all real relationships that I think will blossom. You all know the concept of nearshoring, where companies are bringing production back for a variety of reasons. One of them is the threat of tariffs, but the other is the supply chain problems that we saw during COVID, and the international tensions that make those supply chains even more dangerous. And so companies are coming back, and a region like ours is a natural place for it, a region like Austin, San Antonio. And more we're looking at European relationships, as you have seen our airport working to create international routes. So the World Affairs Council and the thrust of this region, the destiny of this region are tied together. So it's very appropriate that we be here tonight. It's very appropriate that that we would have the opportunity to talk about the region with you here tonight. Just a quick word about the organization of the book and the sort of the framing of the book. I think when we all got into this and saw the numbers, they were stunning, some which I will share with you in a moment. They were stunning, and in and of itself, they made an impression. That probably is a worthy report. As we dug into it further, it was clear these numbers have implications. They have implications for growth rates and wage rates and housing production and a lot of other things that are before us. And thirdly, these numbers also require action. So this book is something of a call to action to the leaders of the region, both the two major cities, Austin and San Antonio, but the other cities and even the smaller communities that are going to be major places that have to be working together. So one of the central themes I think we emerge from this is that we need some new governance structures, not government, but overarching cooperative structures like what exists in North Texas in the name of the North Texas Commission, for example. And our business leaders need to have ways to communicate with the Austin business leaders on an ongoing basis and begin to think in terms of the region, because the upside of being part of this region is as important as the pride we take in our individual cities. And we'll explain that as we go. I'm going to try to be brief because I do want to turn this over to David, but let me just give you some of the numbers. Today, the census tells us this region, from what I like to say is Pflugerville to Floresville, it's north of Austin to south of San Antonio, is 5.3 million people. How many of you knew that there's 5.3 million people? San Antonio has 1.5 million. Austin has just about 1,990,000 according to the latest numbers. And then there's the corridor, the cities north of Austin, etc. But it's 5.3 million people. Here's what else the census tells us. In 2050, which is 25 years from now, if you can remember what you were doing in 2000, that was 25 years ago. In that time frame, 2050, this region will be 8.3 million people. 8.3 million people in 25 years is the addition of 3 million people. 3 million people is a city the size of Chicago. So we're going to have, descending on this region, another 3 million people. That has massive implications. That 5.3 million that we are today, by the way, is the 10th largest metro in the nation, larger than the Phoenix metro. It is larger than the entire state of Louisiana, and it is larger than 25 other states. So that's what it means to be in a functioning region of 5.3 million people, and we don't think of it that way. If we thought of it that way, we would have done something about age 35 a lot sooner. Because you really can't be a region and live on the spine of one road that's carrying the international traffic from Mexico, shoppers and consumers, workers and commuters. It just doesn't work. So this is a perfect example of the kind of work that we need to be doing, thinking if this in fact is true and we're going to add a city the size of Chicago to this, it doesn't work. You really can't function as a region because you can't plan on getting from one place to the other. So that's an example of the kind of thing that has to be emphasized. So let's just talk about the internal workings of the region. There's Austin, 990,000 people. It is the 10th largest city in America. It goes back and forth between 10 and 11 from census to census with San Jose. But it's the 10th largest city in America. And so, in Texas, we have 4 cities in the top 10 most populous in America. Houston number 4, San Antonio number 7, Dallas number 8, and Austin number 10. That is something that has never happened in the history of the United States. No state has ever had more than 3 cities in the top 10. We've got 4, and by the way, Fort Worth sits at number 12. So anybody who thinks of Texas as the land of wide open spaces and ranches and oil wells, no, that's not what our economy is anymore. Our economy is very urban, and Austin, San Antonio is one part, an important part of that entire working Texas urban, growing, dynamic, world-class economy. This region, the Texas Triangle, but San Antonio, Austin itself, are notable in global terms. And across the world, people are increasingly recognizing we live in a world of urban pinnacles, places which really represent their entire countries, because they're so powerful, so large, they're the places where economic transactions occur, where destinations for economic travel and so forth. And Austin, San Antonio is increasingly becoming one of those places. Again, looking at the region, there's Austin, there is San Marcos, which has got about 72,000 people. It's grown substantially just in the last decade. It's home to a 41,000 student university that's gotten very good, Texas State. It's in Hays County, the 5th fastest growing county in America. Then you go down further to New Braunfels. It's 110,000 people. When I was mayor, Austin had 30,000 people. It's 110,000. New Braunfels, I'm saying, New Braunfels has 110,000 people. And the census tells us that in this same time frame we're discussing, it will be 200,000 people. Austin, New Braunfels is talking about high-rises in their downtown. So think the Metroplex, and remember what's happened in Richardson and in Plano and in Frisco and in Garland and in Arlington, and you can begin to get a feel for what this is going to be. 5.3 million now. When I say 8.3 million in 2050, that's what the Houston Metro and that's what the Dow DFW Metro have today. So just project 25 years into the future and think in terms of the DFW Metro to get a feel for how this is probably going to end up working. Only they've been very attentive through this, what I mentioned, the North Texas Commission, to building rail and adequate transportation and projecting their water needs into the future, 100 years into the future, etc. So we have a lot of work to do. Okay, so I mentioned the corridor. Now, the fastest growth in the corridor, in the Austin San Antonio region, is where? It's north of Austin. That's where let me look at the numbers here. That's where Round Rock is 130,000 people. That's where Georgetown is 96,000 people. Cedar Park is 77,000 people. Pflugerville is 65,000 people. Williamson County is one of the fastest growing counties in America. And these are very serious places. And it's just part of this region. It's an integral part of this region. Now, to the east of Austin, places like Taylor. Nobody knew where Taylor was a few years ago. But now we know it's the home of a $45 billion investment by Samsung in semiconductor activities, right? Then you go a little farther, more toward Lockhart, and what do you have? A Tesla plant that's about 3/4 of a mile long as you drive by it on SH-130, right? Go to Seguin at the far end of SH-130. What's there? Japanese manufacturing, Holt, and many other manufacturing entities. So we have to think in terms of how all of these places fit together. My guess is, and I'm just guessing from the numbers that I see, that most of the growth going forward will be between what is now IH-35 and SH-130, because there's flat land, easily constructible black dirt. Unlike to the west of 35, where we have canyons and caverns and aquifer issues and so forth. But somebody's going to make a lot of money in making that region, what we now think of as a corridor, becomes more like a column of continuous economic activity between Austin and San Antonio. That is where I think the city of the size of Chicago, this population the size of Chicago, is going to fit. Let me switch from the size and the scale and something of the implications to just very quickly tick off the areas we identified as requiring action. I've made reference already to congestion. It's real. The double decking of I-35 has begun. SH-130 is a great road, but we need to add rail to that mix. And that's a really important challenge, the direct line between Austin and San Antonio. Water. San Antonio has looked ahead with Vista Ridge to add 25% to our water capacity, which was really one of the greatest things that SAWS has been able to do. But Austin faces serious water issues because Austin draws its water from the Highland Lakes. If the drought of record was to occur now, the drought of record of 1955 was to occur again, there wouldn't be enough water in the Highland Lakes to support Austin's needs. So Austin is in the search for something as significant as what we've been able to do with Vista Ridge, and the region as a whole has an interest in supporting that. Other challenge areas, housing affordability. We need to work on housing production and housing supply throughout the region, or we face what Austin had faced a few years ago, which is exorbitant, fast rising housing prices. That'll be a challenge as this kind of population growth occurs. Another area is manpower training, human resources development, education. We're blessed with the strong educational institutions that we have at the higher educational level. Think of it. Austin and the University of Texas, San Antonio and UT San Antonio and UT A&M San Antonio. We're the only city in the state to have a branch of the two major systems within our city. And UTSA is now about 43,000 itself. Then I mentioned earlier Texas State with 41,000. And add to that, all of the private institutions. We have our university base in San Antonio, when you include the community college, is about 130,000 students. We're blessed. And some of them are truly excellent. That merger at UTSA and the Health Science Center is a godsend for research, for quality, for continued growth of the university. President Amy was sharing with me the other day, when they studied putting this together, they studied peer institutions that have medical school matched to undergraduate education in the way you can do, real synergy. And the peer institutions they were looking at were like UCLA, for example, and other institutions of that nature. So that's what's ahead for us. And the focus on pre-K, K through 12, manpower training, all of those are essential elements of how we're going to make this work. Air routes is another issue. The elevation of our airport to the level in physical plant and routes that it can serve the southern half of this region as Bergstrom does the northern half. We know a lot of areas in the country where a metro has multiple airports. Think Washington with Dulles and Reagan and BWI. Think Los Angeles with LAX and Burbank and Long Beach and Orange County. And you could go on around the country, Chicago with O'Hare and Midway, and Houston with Bush and Hobby. So coherence, planning for how our airports work together, how we think about routes and so forth is very, I think, important part that we really haven't done anything about to this point. Power and energy, obviously critical. San Antonio has always been proud of its ability to produce spinning reserves of energy. We've invested well. But that was before we started acquiring data centers. And the Microsoft data center, a $1.5 billion asset to build, uses more power than the Toyota plant that produces 240,000 trucks. Once upon a time, we were wishing for a data center, and now we have data centers wanting to come here. There's about 6 in the pipeline because we have the spinning wheel of power. So clearly, energy for the electrification of the United States. Not just data centers, but people in electric vehicles who, when they plug them in, use power off the grid, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Very important. Austin has a tighter energy situation than we do. They're working on it. Down the road, there will be issues of sports. Right now, each of us, Austin and San Antonio, have a major league sport. We have our beloved Spurs. And we're keeping the Spurs. We're going to keep the Spurs. One of the things that people didn't notice in the lead up to the election the other night was when the Spurs sign on to this agreement, it's a 30-year commitment. We have the Spurs for 30 years. And Austin has Major League Soccer. But the day will come, it may require Jerry Jones to move along from the Dallas Cowboys, but the day will come when we have NFL football. Because how can a region of 8.3 million people not have NFL football? And the question is, where will it be? It'll have to be some sort of cooperative understanding of how a region works. Where's the midpoint, and so forth. Similarly for Major League Baseball. So the issue of sports is an important one, and David put special emphasis in this book on that subject. So all of these are challenges. They require people working together. But working together doesn't mean meeting occasionally at a cocktail party and talking about what we ought to do. It means structures. It means serious dialogue. It means leaders like Judge Andy Brown in Austin and Peter Sakai here, consciously working, intentionally working on the rail project, for example. There's a lot that we need to do, but the upside is immense. The upside is wages, growth, commercial opportunities, global investment, first-class universities with sufficient resources to keep them excellent, quality public schools. The upside of being in a healthy, strong region is immense. Failure? What does that look like? It looks like unplanned congestion. It looks like people going off in different directions, doing their own version of what they think is appropriate for their communities instead of some sort of overarching sense of where we go. And I think that is the central message of this book. We need to work together. First, we need to recognize the kind of rocket ship we're sitting on. Thank you.
Thank you, Henry, and I add my thanks to the NDO for the invitation for us to be here. My name is David Hendricks. I worked 42 years at the Express News, and then I came to work for Henry to do writing and research on urban Texas. We've done some very valuable work, I think. I covered this organization for decades while I was at the Express News. And I learned a lot doing that, and I appreciate this organization for that. I learned a lot with you all and try to convey it to Express News readers through the business section. For this event, I know all of you are trade-minded, I decided for this occasion to look up the latest international trade export values for the two main cities, because I don't think that they've ever been looked at together before. So I found the latest information from 2023 from the U.S. Department of Commerce International Trade Administration. And so these are global trade export values. The 5 counties of the Austin Metropolitan Statistical Area in 2023 did $17.2 billion worth of trade, according to this agency. And what I'm telling you is not in the book, because I don't trust the numbers, and I'll explain why. The San Antonio metropolitan area in 2023, 8 counties, did $12.8 billion worth of international trade. These are exports, these are not imports. So the result is that there's $30.07 billion worth of trade coming from the Megaregion. Sounds like a respectable amount, and it should, I should explain at this point why I don't trust the numbers. The numbers, and I don't think many of you would either, because the numbers are, and I'll give examples. The numbers are, the agency logs these exports as originating from where they're sent overseas instead of where they're made. So there's and I'll tell you the numbers in a minute, but there's a lot of things that are made that are not sent to their overseas destination. So, I mean, they go to the Port of Houston, they go to Corpus Christi, they go to DFW. But there's like a $4.5 billion margin between Austin and San Antonio. And that margin is probably accurate. I mean, it's accurate that there is a margin. It's hard to say how big of a margin.
Is that computer products versus automotive products, you think?
No, well, Austin outperforming San Antonio Metro probably makes sense because a lot of high-end technology is made in Austin. We're more like, we do make computers here, but there's also a lot of telephone equipment that's made here, and other various categories. So Austin, with its heavy technology presence, with giants like Apple and Microsoft, outranks us at the moment, or has a margin at the moment. But it's really hard to say what the full number is. Now, the numbers from places like Houston and Corpus and DFW are ridiculous because everything gets stamped there as originating from there, regardless of where it's made. Houston has $175 billion per year. Corpus Christi does $72.5 billion per year. DFW, with its large airport, does 51 billion, which is 20 more than what comes out of Austin and San Antonio combined. So, this organization has worked to move our international image and to promote business here to become export minded, and that work needs to continue. So those are my briefs.
Let's take some questions from the audience, Henry. I'm going to ask somebody to take the microphone there. Whose assignment is that?
Well, Armin is walking the microphone back. Let me just say, I've been watching the World Affairs Council since it was created in 1982. I wasn't here, and obviously paid attention to it. But what Armin has done is make it more relevant, more active, putting on more programs, and doing a great job. We owe him a special
Thank you. It takes a team to do it. I've got a great board, and I can't have to mention Hugo, our board chair with HEB, and also my UCLA Bruin colleague of mine, alma mater, Patricia, who hired me, but it's a team effort, and thank you, Secretary Cisneros. Before I open it up to questions that Megan take, we have books that Twig, if you want to get extra books for Christmas, for the holidays, Twig, Jean is here with Twig books, if you want to make sure that she doesn't have to carry out the box that she had to lug in here. So help her out. And also read a great book. So thank you all for coming. Thank you, Secretary Cisneros, Robert Rivard, and David. And Megan's going to bring the mic around for questions.
Okay, who has a question?
So high-speed rail between Austin and San Antonio. You were a mayor, I think, when we started talking about rail. Maybe it wasn't high-speed back then, but it seems like if we could connect convention center to convention center with high-speed rail, you could leave at the top of the hour in Austin, you could arrive in San Antonio at the train terminal, and you could depart the mall every 30 minutes back and forth.
Yeah.
This seems like the most no-brainer of a beautiful connectivity corridor in the world that could get built. Why are we stuck? And is the study that just happened in Travis County going to unstick us? Thank you.
I think we're closer to action than ever before. I think, as I mentioned, Judge Andy Brown is the county judge in Austin, and he has a group that's meeting every month to sort of check signals on progress. And Peter Sakai is wired into that, and they're working. The barriers in the past have been things like the unwillingness of the Union Pacific to allow the use of a rail line. They felt that it was too dangerous to mix passenger and freight, and it would compromise their freight schedules and so forth. That's not a problem in other parts of the country, but that's been a barrier here. So then it then becomes, well, if you're not going to have that use of that right of way, then you identify another right of way that drives the cost down. Unbelievably, you have to acquire right of way and build rail. But that may be the only option that remains. So there is serious discussion underway. I just think part of what we need to do in conversations like this, and hopefully conversations that the book generates, is recognize that it is time. It is time to do this. It's never going to get any easier with land prices going up at the rate they are. And we cannot build a region on the basis of a single roadway. It just can't be. And the upside of recognizing the significance of a functioning region is that. It's difficult to single out areas and say that is a region that actually works as a region, but I'm a great admirer of what they've done in North Texas in DFW. There's a whole lot of evidence of exactly, they built an airport together. They have rail connections. They have sports facilities that are located in such a way that it serves the entire region. They have fast-growing areas like Frisco to the north, and most of the communities around Fort Worth just breaking records. A cargo airport, Alliance, that serves the whole metroplex. There's just a lot of things they've done right, but they had to get over the enmity between Dallas and Fort Worth that existed once upon a time until they figured out we can do things if we work together. So those kinds of structures are really important. I don't want to embarrass him, but we have here a person who believes in the region, and who, when we did a documentary on the subject, was actually the person who was quoted more and more powerfully than anyone else, and that is Graham Weston. And Graham has operations here and in Austin, had with Rackspace. And several years ago, Graham asked me to come to meet him for breakfast one morning to talk about how our economic development programs were not aggressive enough in thinking about a region, which is part of why the San Antonio Economic Development Foundation is now named Greater SATX. Greater SATX, because he brought a regional perspective. So I know he has. Let's just thank him for all of these.
School Club of San Antonio and Harbor Club of San Antonio. Is Texas still the #1 export, produces more, exports more goods and services out of the United States than the entire United States? It used to be the #1. All the exports of Texas were greater than all of the rest of the United States. Is that true? It still stands the same way it did before.
Texas, for about 20 years running, has been the leading exporting state.
That's oil and gas and agricultural products.
Yes.
And the heavy ports that handle that kind of cargo in Houston, that's a big part of it.
So we're still producing more exports than most of the United States does as a whole from our state alone.
That's been true for about 2 decades.
Right. Okay, thank you.
David Marquez is a hero. We need to greet him with a round of applause as well. David was the head of economic development, and his signature, his handprint, is on the Toyota plant, JCB, Navistar, the automotive clusters, and every other major economic development that's occurred in Bexar County in the last 20 years.
Thank you, Henry, for that. It's very kind of you, very generous. You know this a long time, Henry, and you and I love Japan very much, and we see the aging population there. And if I take a trip from West Bexar County to Seguin, you've got Tower Semiconductor owned by an Israeli firm. You've got, of course, JCB coming from the UK, right, from England. You've got, of course, Toyota and several other Toyota suppliers in Japan. You've got NAT International, which is actually by Volkswagen, now it's a German owned. You've got Aichi, you've got Brooks, you've got 2 French-owned companies with Cuisine Solutions and Bakery, and Korean-owned. So it's just a global, and Aichi and Civilo, and then several Japanese and other European companies in Seguin. So what's next? You said 2050 is 25 years from now, which frightened me. I was the Y2K project manager for Rivard County. So that's scary enough, right? But, and by the way, we were successful, as you can see. So where does that come from next? What does that next 25 years look like for international interest? Where should we be focusing our attention for further growth from international investment?
hand the phone to my colleague, he can start.
Well, as I make my way back up to Henry, let me just say that Henry's first trips to Japan were when he was mayor, 1981 to 1989. We need leaders that think long-term. That's a real challenge. Everybody wants to get something done tomorrow and get reelected. But we need to think long-term. It was 30 years ago, last month, that the Pentagon announced the closure of Kelly Air Force Base, which was the creation of the Latino middle class in our city. Leaders went to the Clinton administration and convinced them to go slow. And there was a 6-year closing period of Kelly Air Force Base. It didn't happen anywhere else in the country like that. It took 6 years from 1996 to it finally closing in 2001. That gave us time to plan and do something really intelligent. And today, Port San Antonio is arguably the most successful military-based conversion in the country. 19,000 smart jobs and counting. So when we're talking about what we're talking about today, whether it's building rail or whatever else, we need a credible public-private entity that's thinking long-term. Not next year, not last year, but 20, 30, 40 years from now.
I would say first, without reference to international, that the San Antonio economy is positioned to transition well beyond our traditional tourism and the military, and that is well underway. But the biosciences being the largest employer in the city with about 180,000 people working in it. With advanced manufacturing, these automotive companies we've been talking about, but also what's happening in Port San Antonio now, right now. With the cybersecurity activity, which is like getting on the leading cusp of these things, because cybersecurity is a needed analog to all of the other digital developments. And we have Air Force presence here, and about 20,000 people working in cyber, and UTSA, one of the leading cyber education centers, as a result of all of that. So you can see the outlines of where we are deeply embedded in futuristic things. The biosciences, everybody's list of one of the top areas that's going to develop, advanced manufacturing, etc. Now, the international aspect of it. I firmly believe as this region gets international and global attention, and people around the world are looking where to put capital in a safe country and in a with stable economic monetary system and so forth, and a region that is growing within that country, we're going to get our fair share of attention. And it's going to be Swedish companies in the biosciences, for example. I was in Japan a month ago in September, and several biosciences companies came to an event that Greater SATX put on. Really exciting things. Medical devices, pharmaceuticals, and Europe is awash with technology innovations, some of which are going to come to the United States. So if you follow the basic logic here, if we're doing things that are futuristic and doing them well, and we're in a region that is attracting attention for its general growth, then it just makes sense people around the world are going to be looking at this very place as an opportunity. So I don't know whether that answers your question, but I think that's kind of the sense of the next, in my opinion. I'd love to hear from Greg if you have a thought you want to add, or maybe we'll take another question and come back to you after you've had a chance to think about it. But it's almost a crime to have Graham here and not on this subject, and not here on this subject. Graham, by the way, has roots in the UK, right? And so he's a walkie-talkie international affairs.
Go ahead.
Yeah, this question is for Secretary Cisneros. Good to see you.
You introduce yourself.
Yeah, Charles Maciani, a graduate of Central Catholic, a graduate of Harvard, so we have a lot in common, I guess, for better or for worse. all the news breaking, right? So you mentioned something about data centers, and I wrote a thesis at Harvard on blockchain technology, not necessarily crypto, I know that's the buzz thing, but blockchain in particular, and the tremendous water resources that it takes to crunch the data such that those algorithms can maintain, especially on the West Coast, and then quite frankly in Asia as well. So I wonder if you could say one or two things about the precautionary measures in place, seeing that there's more than a few data centers in the pipeline. What kind of pressures are on the community, and what kind of water pressures, and what kind of precautionary measures are in place for that kind of growth?
A very good question. And it's a broader principle question in the sense that the principle of not selfishly going after things that cause us problems because of the new demands that they create. So I think it's important to be careful. Safeguards in place, I trust the leadership at SAWS as well as CPS to be thinking about these things. I was pleased, for example, this is power, not water, that CPS just purchased 4 power stations. They are fossil fuels, but they give us additional capacity in this period. And it's very interesting. I work in infrastructure in national terms, and a few years ago, the thrust was completely toward alternatives, power alternatives, wind and solar, offshore wind, etc. And it was the transition. Now it's not the transition anymore. It's the addition of power that is needed. So it's the combination of the renewables with established power systems. I don't know how long that will be the case, whether there'll ever be the point where the renewables are enough to sustain. But the country is, and I use these words advisedly because they seem obvious, the country is electrifying. We need more electricity. And so that means more power generation, more electrical generation. And it's the biggest challenge that we've got as a nation. As for water, we are water scarce. We live in a water scarce part of the country, and the water scarcity is likely to get more acute than less. Because if you study where the drought line is in Texas, it's moving steadily eastward, which means areas like ours, which had sufficient water for what we were doing, are going to get more arid, drier. So we have to make smart judgments about having enough water. I can't speak to specifically what plan is in place and what it allows us to do in terms of economic development, even population growth, but it clearly is an issue. Phoenix, in the last few years, has had to limit construction permits. That's one of the fastest growing metros in the country, has had to limit construction permits because they don't have enough water. So, and they're reaching for water wherever they can. Maybe there will be some sort of miraculous developments in desalination, for example, but it's very expensive. In any event, you raise an important and correct issue.
We have another question?
Let me see if I can ask Greg. Just what do you think of this discussion, Greg? Are we roughly on the right track, or are we making?
Ask him how often he drives on I-35.
Yeah, 35 is no fun. I don't know that I have anything to add. I mean, I think that San Antonio and Austin have remarkably different strengths. I mean, I think for real, when I was talking to you about the region, Austin had become necessary for rack space. We had 800 employees in Austin, and we had a bus that went back and forth twice a day. And Austin's talent pool had become necessary for us to tap into, and certainly it allowed us to grow rack space to 4,000 people here in San Antonio at the time. And so I think that was an example of Austin, or really San Antonio and Austin becoming a region. I mean, a lot of times we are, and certainly we have very different strengths. So
Austin has continued to be a tech place. And I would say that one of my big mistakes has been wanting San Antonio to be a tech place. I think that we are much more likely and much more logically a high-tech manufacturing, an advanced manufacturing location. Look at the recent wins. I'm particularly proud of JCB, a company that chose San Antonio for their $500 million plant. I think it's the biggest thing since Toyota. So I think that ultimately San Antonio and Austin will have very different strengths with a big tether between us of I-35, where one of the ways it will be region is that those will be better communities that people commute from, not different than Frisco or Plano, perhaps better, hopefully better. But I do think one of the problems that holds us back is our MPO should be one and it's two. And I think this creates an additional challenge for transportation between the two regions. Also, if you drive to Austin, you'll almost always lose your cell phone signal in San Marcos, because that's where the phone system switched from Austin to San Antonio. And I think about that same disconnect between the way transportation is thought of between Austin as a city and San Antonio as a city. And I think this hurts us. Same with the airport. Yeah, I live in between, and so fortunately, I'm able to use both airports. But I think that if we did have one airport, like Austin does, like Fort Worth does, Dallas-Fort Worth, I'm sure Fort Worth regrets not having its own, but I think DFW Airport is, it's a powerhouse around the world.
I think Rand brings up an important point too that we want to emphasize. We're not suggesting we're becoming one city, one metropolitan area. Austin's Austin, San Antonio, and all these corridor cities have their own personalities and cultures and history. None of that's going away. And we need to learn how to collaborate in a part of the world where there's not a lot of history of collaboration. Let's face it, when we went to vote Tuesday, one of the shadows that was being cast over us was Austin's desire to have the Spurs. Las Vegas would like them, Seattle would like them, lots of places would like them. But Austin can write a pretty big check. If they wanted the Spurs, they could have built them an arena and easily paid a premium for them. So we're going to be working with these cities, but we're also going to be competing at the same time. It's an interesting dynamic. Graham mentioned the MPOs, the Metropolitan Planning Organizations. We don't have a public-private regional entity that can represent border city, represent Austin, represent San Antonio. And we're in an unfortunate situation in our state where there's been a culture war between the state's Republican leaders and the largely Democratic mayors of cities, and it's not working. We have billions of dollars, tens of billions of dollars actually in windfall revenue. We're 25, 27 billion just in our rainy day fund. We can easily afford that train, but we don't have a mechanism for talking among ourselves, planning among ourselves, creating funding among ourselves. To me, that's going to be key for us to get over this city-state standoff that's occurring right now in every legislative session. We've got to break out of that, figure out a way to work together regionally.
First off, thank you for the talks today, gentlemen. My question is actually, based off of Mr. Wesson's thought regarding the airport. With so much acknowledged attention this region is getting, how much they'll get. Where are the talks at about increasing, the presence of our international airport? Probably like many others, sometimes we have to drive to Austin to get a direct flight to where we need to go because San Antonio doesn't provide it. So in order to attract those large international investments, where are the talks at on getting our airport where it needs to be?
Nowhere. General McDermott, who headed USAA, had a vision of a joint Austin-San Antonio airport. And the conversation sort of began to look for a place to do this, right? It never caught fire, it never caught on. Austin was talking about building its own airport at the time, and they were talking about going northeast of Austin to Maynard. Then, Bergstrom fell in their lap, and their problem was solved. Mueller Airport was just not adequate for a city growing as fast as Austin. But when Bergstrom fell in their lap, it was a former strategic air command base with long runways because there were B-52s flying out of there. And it suddenly made all the sense in the world. And they got a long runway, figuratively, long runway for airport solution. And they're building it up. They have a multi-year plan, 10-year plan for development of terminals and the rest of it. I have been an advocate of a larger airport in another location for San Antonio, but I'm an outlier on this. Most people believe that this airport is what we're going to be. Cheryl Scully, when she was city manager, just wouldn't allow a conversation about any other airport solution but this one. And I think this airport can stand a lot of improvement, and a lot of it is planned for this airport. But it's very difficult with a limited runway length and 2 crossing runways on that acreage of land. So no matter what you do to add terminals and so forth, it's still going to be a small airport. Now, can it serve us well for the next decade? Yes, I think so. And some people would say multiple decades. But the time frame for building an airport is 50 years of thought. Is this airport adequate for San Antonio 50 years from now? Does anybody believe that? In fact, here's the problem. There's a fellow named Casarda, who's a professor at University of North Carolina, who wrote a book called Aerotropolis. And the fundamental thesis of Aerotropolis was, in the old days, cities built an airport as a convenience for its people to fly. Airports today are the definition of the city's capabilities. If you don't have connectivity out of an airport, you are not going to be among the major players in the city economy. It just, you have to have an airport that serves the country directly and as much as possible, the world. And I believe when you look at a map of the United States, that's going to be the separation, that's going to be the definition of cities that are the connected places, the growing places, the regional centers, Atlanta, Denver, San Francisco, Boston, Chicago, etc., Dallas, Fort Worth, Houston, etc. I noticed this morning, the administration put out a list of the airports where they're going to reduce flights by 10% starting tomorrow. And they said the 40 core airports, and they showed a map. And in Texas, they were Houston and DFW. 40, so we're not in the 40. And yet we want to be a prosperous, growing, strong city. So I think, as unpopular as it is, we need to start at least analyzing what we're going to do for the long run about air connectivity. This is not going to solve our problem where we are today. So I guess you would say that's one of the areas that we point out in the book, not with a solution in hand, but as a problem to work on. I did mention earlier that many metropolitan areas in the country have multiple airports. So people in Los Angeles can go out of LAX, or people who live in the southern part of the region can fly out of Orange County, and then there's also Burbank within the state. So different airports play different roles. We got to figure out what our respective roles are going to be.
So be elaborate.
Well, no pressure there.
Eduardo Papa, former SOS trustee and local citizen. I'm very passionate about economic development, small business development, and we've had a really good conversation here about economic development. My question comes about what else do we need to do? I've always seen San Antonio having a leg up because San Antonio owns its own water company, its own power company. As the discussion went, we have more resources right now that Austin in this mega region yet. We've had a lot of troubles landing big headquarters or big companies here, and JCB was a great success. What else besides doing something at 35, perhaps doing something else at the airport? Is there something else that we need to be doing in order to get there?
We need assured water supplies for the very long run. Dallas-Fort Worth has water for 100 years, all the way from lakes in Oklahoma into the Metroplex. We need to assure power adequacy because this rate of growth requires more power. It's hard to emphasize just how much the demands for power will be. For example, as automobiles electrify, right now automobiles are driven by gasoline, the vast majority. And that's not a tax, that's not a demand on the power system. But most people don't make the connection that when you buy an electric car, you still require power, and that power is electrical, and that means your grid has to be able to handle that many more people who are presently on fossil fuel engines with electrical adequate power. So power, I mean, very attentive to that. We mentioned the need for workforce. Now, this is a sensitive question, but what I'm about to say is a sensitive point. I've always operated from the belief that if we just could grow the economy enough and add jobs and raise wages, that was the principal way in which we would lift people out of poverty and create and move toward the middle class. Okay? I know that we have to focus on education. K through 12, higher education, community college, etc. But I was just stunned the other day when some poverty numbers came out. They listed San Antonio as the third city in the country by poverty rate. Right? And what blew me away in that report was number 1 and number 2 were Philadelphia and Houston. Now, how is it possible with that dynamic economy that Houston has that they still have that high poverty rate? And the answer is, it's not enough just to create a job. It's not enough just to raise the level of wages in company. You really have to dig deep into the communities, into the churches, into the neighborhoods, on the training side, on the workforce side. So that, I think, is a really critical point because this region cannot grow without the capable workforce. I worry now, right now, and I'm not close enough to it to know whether this worry is realistic, but Toyota has sucked up a lot of the manpower that's capable of doing the work in Toyota with robotics and so forth. And then we got JCB, and then we got Navistar, okay? How many more workers are out there that a company that's trying to bring another plant like that could employ? That's a limitation if they can't. They'll do that analysis and they'll find out it's not here. It won't come. So it becomes a limitation. It's two things. It's a pathway out of poverty and it's an asset for the growth of the region to focus on education and training. So those are the kinds of things that I think we need to be doing with energy, with intentionality. Okay?
We're going to have to stop it there. I'm sorry. You all will stick around to answer more questions and take pictures. Please take advantage to get extra copies with Gene at the Twig Bookstore. Let's give a wonderful World Affairs Robert Rivard. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Robert Rivard, Secretary of Cisneros. Thank you so much for your time. David Hendricks, thank you for doing this. Stay tuned for the next event. We appreciate you all for coming out. Thank you.